In this video, I'm going to demonstrate a new capability for digitizing data directly into Fusion 360 with a MicroScribe a digitizer. I'll start by sharing my screen so that you can see the Fusion 360 interface. I've got a little video where I have a part set up to take a few measurements from. And then here in the lower right corner of the screen, you can see Muse, which is set up with an active MicroScribe. Now I'm going to be operating in millimeters, today. So in the past, it's been difficult to get information directly into Fusion 360. Like several of the CAD systems that are on the market, there's really no facility provided for doing manual entry of data, so it doesn't work directly with Muse's capability of acting as a keyboard wedge. And by that, I mean a product that will actually shove information onto the keyboard buffer as if you were typing it in by hand. And what we've done is worked around that by creating a small little add-in to Fusion 360. It's called MicroScribe Points, very simply. So if we go into the add-ins and look at scripts, and then I pull that back over here. If we look in the add-in section, you'll see this item called MicroScribe Points. Now, you have to install this applet, and that applet's available, from us. You use the same method that you would for any other add-in that you are placing into Fusion 360. So it'll be pretty familiar to users, and for others not so familiar, we have developed a step-by-step guide of how to get things set up. Just make sure that MicroScribe Points is showing up in the add-ins. Choose Run if you don't see the circle of dots next to it. This shows that this version of it is actually running. And what that does is create a little mini interface that we then can use the keyboard wedge capabilities of the MicroScribe to get raw data into the program. So to give you an example of how that works, if I come over to Solid, I go to the Construct menu and come down to where it's got some point options, you'll see a new entry. It's called MicroScribe Points. If I click on that, a little dialog will pop up. Now, in that dialog, you've got the opportunity to go ahead and associate it with, a base, feature, give each individual point a name, and to provide the data that you want. This is where the MicroScribe will now be placing the digitized data. There's also a method for creating individual points that you type in by hand. So this dialog has a little bit of a double usage on it. But before showing how this is used, let's actually go down to the Muse window. And I want to show you that there is a modification here that we created to actually make it work. So within Muse and the strings settings, there are a couple of new definitions. One is for Fusion 360. The other says Fusion 360 complete. So within Muse, this is a way that we can associate activities with the different buttons in the trigger. So this first window is for button 1. I've chosen to add the string format Fusion 360 for button 1. And this is this definition. You don't have to pay a lot of attention to that right now, but it does define the process and the format for the data that's going to be, manually or automatically, I should say, typed in by the MicroScribe. Down below, for those of you who have the most current version of Muse, there's an opportunity to set an activity for the second button. And in this case, it's the complete action, which this definition basically says hit the return key, which can be then used to actually complete an activity. But in any event, between the MicroScribe points add-in and these custom string definitions in Muse itself, we can now shove information directly into Fusion 360 from the MicroScribe. So let's give a little demonstration of how that works. So first of all, start the Muse points add-in and click anywhere in the data entry field. Now, what this does is makes it active, so it can take data from the MicroScribe. Then I'm going to use the arm. You can see in the video now that I'm coming down to take a diameter of the circle, and I press my primary trigger. And you'll also see that a blue dot has shown up on the screen. That's a temporary indication of where that point will be when we actually complete the process. I'm taking the third point right there. So now you have 3 points, which I can use to define that circle. Now I'm going to come up here and I'm going to say OK. That will actually dismiss the add-in, but you'll see that 3 construction points have been added to the database. And so there you have it, very simply getting live 3-dimensional data straight into Fusion 360. Let's take it a little bit further, do a few more points just for the sake of demonstration. Again, I'm going to open MicroScribe points. I'm going to select the XYZ position field. And now I'm going to come in and digitize some of this other data. And I will go ahead and take all 5 of these locations, 3 points apiece. Now, if I were doing an actual reverse engineering project, I'd probably be a little bit more careful than I'm being right now. But you can see that it's actually pretty simple now to get a good bit of useful data straight into Fusion 360. Okay. So now then we've collected enough points to define each of those features inside of Fusion 360. I'm going to say OK. All of those points become part of the database. I wanted to rotate around a bit, and you can see that the data that I'm collected is actually in a vertical orientation. That's one of the things about some computer aided CAD programs in the real world is that difference between coordinate systems. In MicroScribe, the XY plane is actually the tabletop. XY plane in Fusion 360 is the front plane. And there's several other CAD programs that are like that out in the real world. So from a machining standpoint, XY is going to be, as the MicroScribe defines it, that top surface. But in any event, it's not normally a problem, other than perhaps your perception of the the build process. These parts look sideways in Fusion 360, but they're still in the proper orientation for machining and manufacturing, with the XY plane being the flat plane parallel to most of this data. Now, we can't go in and directly use these points to develop sketch geometry because they are indeed in 3D space. And so we're going to want to create an actual sketch, put this information on. So if I come in and let's choose the XY plane, and it doesn't matter that the plane actually goes through or in the proximity of these points, because they're going to be projected down, and they were taken, from a flat orientation, anyway. So if I select XY plane, let's create a sketch. And now then, if I come in closer, just so that we can see this better, and let's choose a circle feature. I'm going to use 3-point circles, and I can come in now and I can select, each of these points. And you can see that they will highlight over here on the left as I select it. That point. So there's my center bore. And now I can quickly go around and do that for each of these others. And if you're having trouble snapping, we can just get a little bit closer. And the last one. Okay. And with that, I can finish my sketch. And you can see that I have now a projected sketch of that data. If I come around to the front plane and look at it, you can see that there's general alignment. Now, of course, there's parallax in the way that Fusion 360 presents this data. But in any event, that's a real quick example of being able to capture data into Fusion 360 directly from a MicroScribe using the new MicroScribe points add-in that is available from us, basically, for the asking. If you have any questions, you can get a hold of us via our website, www.revware.net, or give us a call at 919-790-0000. And thank you again for spending this time with us.